When I was 19, I spent a summer working as a house sitter. It was easy money: water the plants, collect the mail, feed any pets if necessary. Most of the time, I barely had to do anything other than show up once a day. One house, though, still gives me chills every time I think about it. The family, a middle-aged couple with no kids, was going on a 2-week vacation. Their house was nice but outdated, the kind of place where everything felt just a little too quiet. It was located at the edge of a cul-de-sac, surrounded by tall oak trees. The woman, Mrs. Fletcher, gave me a thorough tour before leaving. She was insistent about one thing: don't open the basement door. "The lock sticks sometimes," she explained casually, brushing it off like it wasn't a big deal. "There's nothing down there except old furniture and boxes. Just leave it alone." I nodded, not thinking much of it. I wasn't getting paid to snoop, so if they didn't want me in the basement, that was fine by me. The first few days were uneventful. I went by every evening after my part-time job, watered their ferns, made sure the house looked untouched, and left. The basement door was a heavy wooden thing, painted white but chipped around the edges. It was at the end of a narrow hallway off the kitchen. I barely noticed it until the 5th night. I had just finished watering the plants when I heard it, a soft thumping noise. At first, I thought it was coming from outside, maybe a branch hitting a window or the neighbor's dog playing in the yard. But as I walked toward the kitchen to put away the watering can, I realized the noise was coming from the basement door. Thump. It wasn't loud, but it was deliberate, rhythmic, like someone knocking, not hard enough to demand attention, but enough to be heard. I froze, my pulse quickening. Rationally, I told myself it was probably nothing. Maybe something had shifted down there, a box falling over or an animal that had somehow gotten inside. But the door was locked. How could anything have gotten in? I leaned in closer, listening. Thump. Thump. It stopped. For a long moment, I just stood there staring at the door. The air in the house felt heavier, like something was watching me. Finally, I shook it off and left. I told myself it was the house settling, or my imagination, or something equally mundane. The next night, though, it happened again. This time, the thumping started the moment I walked into the house. It was louder, more persistent. I crept toward the basement door, my hands trembling. I pressed my ear against it, holding my breath. Thump, thump, thump. Then it stopped. "Hello?" I called out, immediately regretting it. My voice echoed in the empty house. No response. I considered calling the Fletchers, but I didn't want to seem like I couldn't handle a simple house-sitting job. So I locked up the house, left in a hurry, and decided to come back in the morning. The next day, I told myself it was all in my head. Houses make noises, especially old ones. In the daylight, everything seemed less threatening. I went about my usual task, avoiding the basement door as much as possible. But as I was leaving, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The lock on the basement door was scratched, as if someone had been trying to pick it. Small wood splinters littered the floor beneath it, and the edge of the door frame looked like it had been pried at. I left immediately and called the Fletchers. Mrs. Fletcher sounded calm, almost too calm, when I told her about the lock. "That's strange," she said. "It's probably nothing, but we'll check it when we get back. Just keep an eye on things." That night, I barely slept. When I arrived at the house the following evening, something felt wrong. The front door was slightly ajar. I hesitated, debating whether to call the police, but curiosity got the better of me. Slowly, I stepped inside. The house was silent, but the basement door was wide open. I stared at it, my heart racing. The air smelled damp and stale, like old wood and mildew. I considered leaving right then and there, but something compelled me to move closer. I peered down the stairs into the darkness below. "Hello?" I called out again, my voice shaky. No response. I reached for the light switch on the wall, but when I flicked it, nothing happened. The bulb must have been out. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam illuminated the narrow, unfinished staircase. Dust motes swirled in the air, and the faint outline of boxes and old furniture appeared at the bottom. I took one step down, then another. The basement was freezing, colder than the rest of the house. My breath fogged in front of me as I scanned the room. It was exactly as Mrs. Fletcher had described, Boxes, old chairs, a rolled-up rug. Nothing out of the ordinary, except for one thing. In the far corner, there was a mattress. An old, stained mattress with a thin, threadbare blanket tossed over it. Next to it was a small pile of items. Empty food wrappers, a flashlight, and a screwdriver. Someone had been living down here. I stumbled back, my heart pounding. As I turned to bolt up the stairs, I heard it, a soft thump behind me. I whipped around, my flashlight shaking. There was no one there. I ran out of the house, locked the door behind me, and called the police. They searched the basement and confirmed what I'd seen. Someone had been living there, but they were gone. No one knows how they got in or how long they'd been there. The Fletchers didn't seem surprised when I told them. They changed the locks and offered me extra money to finish the job, but I refused. Whatever, or whoever, had been in that basement was enough to make me quit house sitting for good. When I was 20, I worked overnight shifts at a small, run-down motel on the edge of town. It wasn't a glamorous job, but it paid the bills and was usually uneventful. Most of the guests were truckers or travelers passing through. That January night started no differently. At around 10 p.m., a man walked in. He looked off. He was wearing a tattered gray jacket and had dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept in days. He didn't have any luggage, just his wallet and a pair of scuffed-up shoes. "Room 103, he muttered after I asked what he needed. I handed him the key, and he shuffled off without another word. I didn't think much of it. Strange guests weren't exactly rare at this place. About an hour later, I was sitting at the front desk, scrolling through my phone, when I heard a faint sound. Tap, tap, tap. It was soft but steady. I figured it was coming from room 103, the man's room. At first, I thought maybe he was fixing something or tapping on the wall for whatever reason. I brushed it off, but it didn't stop. Every few minutes, the tapping started again. Tap, tap, tap. Same rhythm, same volume. It was starting to unnerve me. I decided to check the hallway camera, which showed the doors in the corridor outside the rooms. Room 103's bathroom light was on, faintly visible through the frosted glass window on the side. Odd, since the guests should have been asleep by now. I decided to investigate. Grabbing the spare key, I walked down the dimly lit hallway. My footsteps echoed loudly against the linoleum floor. When I reached room 103, I knocked. "Hello, is everything okay in there?" No response. I knocked again, louder this time, still nothing. I pressed my ear against the door. I couldn't hear anything, not even the tapping now, but the bathroom light was still on, spilling out from beneath the door. I hesitated before using the spare key to let myself in. The room was freezing cold, colder than the rest of the building. The bed was untouched, no luggage, no jacket, no shoes. It was like the man had vanished, but the bathroom door was shut and the light inside was on. "Hello?" I called again. My voice echoed unnaturally. I tried the bathroom door handle, locked from the inside. My stomach dropped. There shouldn't have been a way to lock it from that side unless someone was inside. I knocked on the door harder this time and called out, "Sir, are you okay?" No answer, just silence. The unease was building, but I told myself I was overthinking. Maybe the guy had stepped out and somehow locked the door behind him. I returned to the front desk, hoping the camera might show me something. The monitor showed the hallway outside room 103. No one had entered or exited since the man checked in, but as I watched, the bathroom light in his room flickered, off, then back on. My chest tightened. I rewound the footage and saw something that made my blood run cold. When the bathroom light flickered, a shadow momentarily blocked the frosted window on the door, but the shadow didn't belong to anyone. It was static, tall and unmoving, like someone standing perfectly still inside. I wanted to call the police, but what would I even tell them? That a light was flickering? That a shadow I couldn't explain had appeared? I decided to wait until morning and avoid that room at all costs. When the cleaning staff arrived, I explained the situation to Maria, the housekeeper who had been with the motel for years. She shrugged it off and said she'd take a look. 5 minutes later, she returned, pale and visibly shaken. "The room's empty," she said. No one's there. But the bathroom? What about it? I asked, my heart pounding. There's a shoe in there, she whispered. Just one. Sitting in the middle of the floor. Nothing else. I followed her back to the room. The bathroom door was unlocked now. Inside, the light buzzed faintly above, casting a dim glow. And there it was, a single worn-out shoe placed perfectly in the center of the tile floor. There was no sign of the man, no luggage, nothing to suggest anyone had even been there. We checked the cameras again. No one had entered or exited the room since I left the night before. The man had simply disappeared. I quit the job a week later. To this day, I still think about room 103 and the man in the gray jacket. But more than anything, I wonder how that bathroom door locked itself and who or what was inside.